All right, guys. Horror in the High Desert from 2021. I figured I'd knock this and the sequel out tonight because I watched most of this, rewatched it last night, so it's fresh in my head. And there's not too much to say on both of these because it's a found footage, more of a faux documentary, fake documentary style, and it's hard to discuss those type of found footage movies. Like, these are ones that you kind of just have to get invested in it, and it's going to work for you or it's not. So, Horror in the High Desert is directed by Dutch Marek. I hope I didn't butcher that, Dutch. I've spoken to you once on Instagram. He's been directing long before this movie. Like, I just looked at some of his credits. He directed a decent amount of movies before this. So, it shows with this because the directing is fantastic throughout this movie and the sequel, Minerva, which we'll talk about more in that video. But, I always forget to turn that notification fucking button off. But if anyone hasn't seen this, I'd say that you probably have to be a decent found footage fan to enjoy this. Also, if you're into true crime, like, now this isn't based on a true story, but the way that the film is told, the story's told to us in the film, it's like I said, like a fake documentary. So it's kind of like, it feels like a true crime episode, and very, very effective. Like, it is used, that format is used very well for this film. And it's basically the story of this survivalist, outdoorsman, hiker, whatever you want to call him. But he basically was into like survival expeditions, excursions he would go on. And he ended up going missing in the Nevada desert in 2017. And the movie goes on to, the documentary to tell you about the events leading up to Gary Hinge's last few days, his last few posts on his blog, that he had a survival blog, and just the weird things that he started to experience in the desert leading up to his disappearance, and how the investigation started making a few breakthroughs along the way. So it's very, very, very atmospheric, this movie. It's very authentic feeling. Like, I heavily reminded me when I first saw this of Lake Mungo from 2008. So if you're a fan of like movies like that, Lake Mungo, and like more of Howard's Mill is a more recent example, but those type of fake documentary found footage formatted movies, whatever you want to call them nowadays, it doesn't really matter. They're just movies to me. But it's kind of a slow pace, but just like a true crime drama. It's pretty much that same type of pace. So if that works for you, this movie might absolutely work for you. If it doesn't, if you've seen Lake Mungo and other similar mockumentaries and stuff like that, and they just don't do it for you, still give it a chance, because you never know. But it most likely might not work for you as much as it would somebody who's into these type of movies. Also, whose performance I really, really like in this is the journalist, who is also in the sequel to this. Susie Block, I want to say the actress's name. Really, really like her character and her performance in this. Very, very authentic. Like I said, like, this is all the interviews with Gary's sister and Gary's roommate and the private investigator from later on in the movie. All of these feel so authentic. They don't feel like actors. They feel like just regular people, and it just adds so much more to the whole mystery of the story. But we end up finding out that this guy, Gary Hinge, from his sister, reports him missing. That he went out on an outdoors excursion a few days. He was supposed to return 2 days ago, and he has not returned. And his roommate is caring for his dog, and he has to catch a flight to go out of country or out of state or something. And this is where our story starts, that this man, Gary, is now missing. And I like how they make great use of putting in his footage from his last trip, if you want to call it that. Just showing his character through his own video camera and his own tapes, which is really the only way that you can explore his character. But it's very much complemented by the words that are being said about him by people who knew him. His sister especially, his roommate, friend. But like all the uses of his footage spliced in between, like the interviews here in this documentary. So the first strange thing that they notice when they start a search for this guy, and they find his van, but it's parked in a weird spot, and then they end up finding a footprint around the car, footprints that are bare footprints, no shoes on him, and that's odd just to begin with, because then now the sister's thinking that, maybe somebody robbed him. But then they end up searching the car, and they find, I believe it was like he had like a bunch of money or something like that. But he had personal belongings, material items that, if that was the case, they would have been taken. It was just left behind. And the places that this goes with what actually happens here, and I know that Dutch, the director, I'm pretty sure when I spoke to you, if you see this, that you were working on 3 and 4 simultaneously. So, I mean, another thing. Huge props for being able to take a found footage film and turn it into a multi-film series, and in the works, but already with a great sequel. And I can definitely see the story keep on going, because the way that the mystery builds here is great. But there's a few different theories on exactly, and these are all spoilers from here on out, which I've probably already spoiled shit in the past. But near the end of this movie, we see what was the last footage that Gary recorded. And near the end, say like the third act of this movie, you see... Sorry, lost my train of thought. Near the end of the beginning of the third act of this movie, you find out that Gary came upon this like shack in the middle of the Nevada desert. And there was smoke coming out of the chimney, and he just felt this feeling of dread come over him, and he was terrified, and he ended up sleeping with his shoes on in his tent for the entire night. And then he was posting this on his blog, which is a revelation that comes a little later on in this film, in the documentary, that he had a blog that he would post all survivalist videos, and like how to make a fire, and like all type of survival videos. And people, his followers, were not believing him. They were like pretty much bullying this guy and saying like, we don't believe you. Like, go film it. And his second to last blog post, his last video, was him saying he's going to go back out there. It's like a 3-day in trip and 3-day out trip, so he needs like a whole week. And he's going to go try to find this place again and take footage and stuff. And then the last 15 minutes of this movie, the footage leading up to his death, it's really, really, really well done. Like, it really is. The tension goes through the roof. The atmosphere is just great with the sound, the wind in the desert, and just all with the lights and stuff. You can barely see ahead of you because it's the friggin' desert. All of that is excellently done. And then we see this person come up to the camera, and I've always assumed from when I first saw this film, hills have eyes is what always popped into mind. It seems like some mutated, deformed backwoods dude. Now, I've heard theories just on like subreddits in the past talking about this movie here and there, and they even mention it in the film. Aliens to we discovered a witch that was brewing potions, or Bigfoot, like all different theories. But I'm starting to think that that's where I'm leaning towards. that some type of mutated, deformed, backwoods people that are kidnapping and murdering, in most cases, people who come into their territory here, that come into the backwoods of Nevada. Because we have the second movie, Minerva, which doesn't continue this story. It tells another story that also takes place in Nevada, but the underlying reasons for what happens in Minerva is heavily implied to be linked to what happened to Gary in this movie. And like I said, he's working on the third and I believe fourth film. So I'm guessing we'll expand more on exactly what is happening here and what are these things or people. Is there one? Are there multiple of these? What exactly is out there in the desert that are kidnapping and murdering all these people? Like, it's not a ton of people, but it's enough. Like, I know they mentioned in this first film that it's a small town. I think it's Ruth, Nevada. So it's like people don't just go missing often. So like it was a huge deal in this town. Like when this fake event, but real in the movie sense, took place. But that's pretty much all I can really say. And I was kind of stumbling on what to say about this anyway, just because, like I said, it's the format that this movie is in. You have to just experience it. Like me trying to explain interviews that are happening, just watch the movie, just watch the interviews. Just like you need to get fully immersed in this movie. And that wasn't even the word I was looking for, but whatever. Submersed. You immersed. There we go. I knew it had an "erst" in it. Man, it's late, and I got a bad headache. But you have to immerse yourself into a film like this for it to work. Like, if it works for you, which this is a pretty well-known found footage film, especially in the found footage community, for sure, at this point. This has long been, since it released a few years ago, always gets good praise from anywhere that I read about it. And same for me. Like, I think this is a great film, and there's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of atmosphere, as I said. There's a lot of great tension, especially in the last several minutes. And great job, Dutch. But Minerva, Horror in the High Desert 2, Minerva, I'll have a short, same length of... I can't fucking talk. Length-ish. That's hard to say, though. You got to give me some credit there. Video out on Minerva after this. That one I have not rewatched since it first came out earlier this year. I believe it was earlier this year, yes. But this will be a second watch for me. So I'll see you guys after that. Take care.